Hi, I'm Kevin LaDuke.
I'm Jason Story.
And welcome to the Max Loves Midland Show. Hi, I'm Kevin LaDuke, your weekly tour guide, and welcome back to the Max Loves Midland Show. With me today is Jason Story. This is kind of a part 2 episode, and if you haven't watched part 1, get to know Jason a little bit better before you dive into this with us today. But this episode is going to be a little bit different. Usually on the show, we're talking about the who, and we're talking about the where. So we're very place-based, and we're very individually person-based, and we're trying to build those emotional connections between our viewers and also the people on the show and those great things that they're doing within the community that makes this a little bit of a better place to live. And I always kind of refer to that stuff as it's a little bit of the seasoning on top of the dish, right?
Yep.
You know, you have a community, and if the food's made well at one community and the food's made well at another community and it's healthy and it's up to standards, what's really making the difference? Well, it's that extra little bit of spice. It's that extra little bit of sauce that's on top. But today, we're taking a little bit of a different route, and we are talking about the how and how we're accomplishing some things in our community here. And I'm super excited to have you with us today, Jason. And I'm imagining, back in the day on Conan O'Brien, they used to do the year 3000 or whatever that was. Like, if we could get a little audio burst here, it'd be like the talent continuum.
That's what we're missing.
Or whatever we want to call this thing, because it's yet to be named. And I think that should be a little contest for everyone in the comment section. Come up with the best name for this.
It's almost like a baby. We've conceived it. And we want the best name possible. So, we've put a couple through, but we'd really like this to be a community-adopted approach towards people, whether that's in work or not work. So we wanted to have a name that sticks and resonates in that way.
And, Max Loves Midland as a tool, I've long thought of it as like a high-level talent development and retention tool, but then also just tool for like emotional infrastructure within a community and drawing people closer to their place. And it's one of those things you can't usually quantify. And when I explain this idea of Max Loves Midland to people, a lot of times the payoffs I think are going to come way down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. People meet each other, come up with an idea, develop a relationship, and then amazing things happen. So you might not see those results immediately, but I really believe in the work that we have here. And I've never really thought of Max Loves Midland in the space of how it fits into like a ladder of talent development and retention. And what I think is great is you and the Midland Business Alliance have worked on this incredible piece here. So it's looking like it's multiple steps, and we're kind of moving through this idea of how do we move people or talent through a community and what that process looks like. And you and I have talked about this before, but we haven't really went into depth about what this means, or we've really explored this together. So today we're going to be talking about the how and how people can move through a community and what that looks like. So what is your inspiration behind trying to pull something like this together?
Well, so, I'm lucky enough to have the position of, Director of Talent and Small Business Initiatives at the Midland Business Alliance. And part of what that means is, how do we do the work and what is that work? And we hear the term a lot, attraction and retention, or sometimes we hear attraction, development, and retention. And those are all key factors when it comes to talent in the workplace or people maybe outside of the workplace. But it's not quite complete. So I'm an academic guy, a practitioner and a scholar, and I know that you need to have a strong model if you're going to have strong processes and then strong outcomes. They may be far off, like you said. Maybe some are more short-term, but without a strong, comprehensive model, it's really hard to, number one, just have a deep discussion about a matter, much less get any movement on it. So what we hear a lot of the times is the concept of attraction and retention. And it's not able to go very far because those two things are very far from one another, meaning we may say, well, we want to attract people, and fair enough, we do. And we want to retain people, and fair enough, we do. But you don't retain people by attracting them. So then that automatically opens up the space of what's in between attraction and retention. So that's what I made sure that as I got to work on this space, I was able to occupy this project early this year. I really knew that the starting point needed to be to come up with a comprehensive model, but one that's also understandable and one that's relatable, one that can be true for everyone all the time, one that's true for an organization, big or small, one that's true for a person that's hyper career oriented or not, and then also accounting for the importance of what's true outside of work as well, because it's not just all about work. It's not just all about not work. And you notice I use that term intentionally. Is I don't like to say work-life balance, because I'm alive when I'm at work. I'm alive with you right now, and even though this is a lot of fun, there's a degree of work to it. So that's kind of what we built out now, and that's what I'm really excited to talk about, is really like what's in between attraction and retention.
And now for our listeners out there, or if you're watching this today, please head over to maxwellsmidland.com. We are going to put this in our resources section or about section. It should be easy enough to find if you poke around there. And we would love to invite you to follow along with us today and kind of take a look at this and, really begin to develop your own ideas and see where you see yourself within this continuum or within this people mover or whatever the comments are going to name it, and see where you play a role in this stickiness of a community. Yeah. And part of this too is, it's written right on here, greater engagement in and out of work equals greater community stickiness. And when I read something like stickiness, I think about somebody in a Velcro suit and, you have a Velcro wall and they're going to jump, and like, which area are they actually going to be able to stick to? And we all play different roles in that, and we've spoke about role, and I think Maxwell's Midland has its own role within this continuum and within this piece, and it's a valuable role. And it's just nice to be able to name it. And I think you offer a very specific knowledge area, and Midland Business Alliance, as the authoritative organization in this space, offers a very specific knowledge area for us to be able to rely on and look to and really provide authority to this space. So I appreciate you, providing this today, and then also being willing to share it with us and share it with the community. I know a lot of work has went into this. So how long have you been kind of looking at this idea?
Well, I've studied and practiced organizational development for over a decade across different facets and things like that. And this is an approach in the workplace. You might think about this as being like a talent management framework or strategy. And considering the Midland Business Alliance and as a dual entity of Chamber of Commerce and then also an economic development organization, there's this like provision and understanding that, we need vibrant businesses, but we need people who are outside of those businesses to be patrons to them. And they're probably not working when they're being patrons of them. So we really want to stay focused on our key space of focusing on the workplace, but we understand that if we're not considering that at all, we're not being successful. So, part of that structure of economic development, and I get to work, very closely with Nicole Wilson, who's our vice president, and being able to conceive something more holistic. So I'm very grateful for the Midland Business Alliance's willingness to allow us to be able to, kind of break some of the conventional chains. We hear attraction and retention, regionally, we hear it statewide. So I really like that we're kind of making a stake in approaching it a bit more complexly, if that's even a word, and being able to take a look at what are the factors that really go into this really pervasive challenge and also an opportunity.
I think it's just amazing for us to be able to even have this conversation. The fact that you and I, two people within a community who are not necessarily presidents or CEOs of organizations, but have our own role here and our own expertise that we bring to this space to be able to have this conversation and then have that psychological trust of others within our community to be able to have it. I think we are very fortunate to live in a community that has a direction and is really ready for this type of model. You recently came to a community success panel meeting, and one of the focus areas for the community success panel, and I don't want to confuse those because we have 4 focus areas that we base all our work around, but I guess one of the core areas that we're looking for outline challenges and advantages, one of those challenges is talent development and retention. And I get that that's a challenge in so many areas, but it's really cool that our community success panel has been working together for so long to look and set an amazing community vision like Midland and Inclusive Community, together, forward, bold, and exceptional place where everyone thrives. And then also look at these 4 different focus areas. But none of that stuff means anything unless we're putting some real action into practice. So this is a framework that can be put into practice throughout our community. And we hope that people really will adopt it in their own organizations and look to this model as a way to move people through their organization, but also through the community, because we continue to share spaces. Just because you don't work with anyone anymore, or you told a very compelling story in part 1 of this episode about kind of your exit from the Midland Country Club, and not all divorces are created equal, and that was a very beautiful way to kind of look at that succession plan out of that and go into a different space. I think that we can provide opportunities that go beyond the 4 walls at our offices as well. It really branches out into how are we providing opportunities for one another, which becomes the true essence of community. And I want to jump into the framework a little bit, and let's go step by step and just talk a little bit about these areas. And again, you and I have not had in-depth conversation in these spaces in terms of the framework itself, one by one. We've sat in some committees together. I'm happily part of your Rad Talent Committee at the Midland Business Alliance, and I think it's just amazing work going on there. But the first step is attract, and that's the idea, right? You dropped off at the H Hotel, put you in a space. Like, are you attracted to the community? And the actual definition we have here is appealing to people by highlighting workplace, communal, and developmental opportunities, safety, security, inclusivity, positive culture, and aesthetics. Now, there's a lot of stuff there, but how do you feel when you get to a place? What's that? What's that first impression like? Is the person you're seeing across the restaurant? Are you attracted to them? Like, what does that feel like? So
yeah, I mean, you named it as like there's a lot packed in there, but it's simply put as like, what do you got to offer? And then by that, you might get my attention, and then by that, you might attract me if you've got some things that I value. And that's one of the key steps that gets a lot of attention when it comes to talking about this matter of being able to, well, how do we get a lot of people that we need to see in our workplaces in our community? How do we demonstrate what we have to offer? And we can think about that in two parts, work factors and non-work factors. In a job setting, we demonstrate enticements or what we have to offer through like a job description, maybe even a compensation package, maybe some benefits and things like that. That kind of says, well, here's what we have to offer. Maybe you show more than that. Maybe you show what your company does and how you do it and what you stand for, and maybe some of the key milestones that the company has had success in. You're just showing what value you have to offer individuals.
In that attraction piece, it's just that first interaction of, how attracted are you to that space? You're not in a condition to fall in love yet.
I'm just looking your way.
Exactly. Like, I'm just feeling it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes, in a workplace, that might be, you might have that specifically stated in a job interview, what that looks like. Like, here's why you should be attracted to us. But there's so many other factors in a community that are much more passive. Maybe that's the wrong word, but you're not understanding that there's such factors in that attraction piece, but yet you're building this relationship and you're building this piece, and there's so much stuff that plays into this. But as you're working through the attraction piece, to actually begin to acquire, which you put as the process of negotiating, selecting, and committing to like-minded people through mutually beneficial relationships, that's where you start to take that to the next level. Maybe you go on your first date. Maybe you have that little bit of, you're kind of rubbing hands a little bit and just kind of feeling it out. But that acquire piece, that's like the offer, correct?
Yeah, so when we talk about attraction and retention, we have to recognize that acquisition is a lot different. Like, acquisition's like, all right, we've attracted you. We're thinking about what are we going to do?
No.
Yeah, are we going to join forces? Are we going to partner up? Are you going to live here? Or are you going to work here or not? And that's fundamentally different than attraction. Attraction is just considering it or looking that way, whereas acquisition is a promise, whether it's formal or informal, whether we're talking about living in a community or whether it's taking a job, whether that's nearby or in a neighboring community. We want to make sure that there's a distinction there, because if our efforts are just on attraction of talent, that doesn't have anything to say about actually acquiring anybody. They're two different metrics. How many people are thinking about you versus how many people are choosing you. We actually need both. And we need to be understanding that we're thriving in both. We don't want to say, well, we had 100,000 people think about moving to our Midland or to our region. Then the next question is, well, how many actually did? Right? So you want to be looking at those conversions, right? And those are different steps as well. I'd say attraction is putting your best foot forward, like you said, and then acquisition is actually talking or formally or informally about, all right, let's team up.
And looking at our area, like the projections for our area for population for the next 20, 30, 40, 50, however many years, right now it's looking like this type of framework really has to come into play in order for us to take a very, very substantial stab at addressing this issue within the community. And we understand that it's an issue and we have to move now in this space. So that acquisition and that turnover, so living is a little bit different than it was pre-pandemic. And not that it's vastly different of a lifestyle, but we have different ideas about work. We have different ideas about place. And We've kind of seen this reversion where, a long time ago, people would say like, green space in a community, it's just like a number, but are people really seeing the value in that? Well, I think the pandemic taught us absolutely those places matter. And I think we're still ranking those places as, very important when it comes to livability. So this scale, do you apply this only to work?
Oh, definitely. We've set some serious intention to figure out how to create language that encompasses work factors and non-work factors. And they're all to do with relationships, whether we might think in the workplace that's like the employee-organization relationship. We could think about that as the community-person relationship. They're still going to follow the same steps and sequence. So to your point that you made, and it's spot on, is that to attract people, it is a bit different, and it is changing because more and more people are choosing where they'll work by where they'll live. The place piece is coming more and more to the forefront. So those attraction pieces, you could have the best job offer in the world, the best compensation packages in the world, but then the questions that are becoming more increasingly pervasive is, what about outside of work? And employers and communities need to be responsive to that.
Because
go ahead.
if we have the space where we're doing work really well, but we're not doing the other stuff really well, I bet we don't see the numbers moving.
Work hard, play hard, and especially for if we want to have, really attractive jobs that are, real plum and premium jobs, is probably they're going to want to have a premium lifestyle outside of that as well.
So to move folks then, we have them in the acquire stage here. So we've put the job offer out there. We bring them into the community. We put the offer of community value out there. They make us their community of choice.
Yes.
But now we have to bring people into this. And we talked in your first part of the episode, like that's a difficult task if you're the freshman on campus.
Yeah.
You don't really understand how you fit into this web. You're trying to find psychological safety to find a role. And you're trying to work yourself into a community. And when I first saw this continuum and I look at the stage of integrate, which is listed as welcoming and connecting individuals with the people, places, and culture that provide the resources needed to thrive, I think Maxwell's Midland is in all steps of this people mover, this talent continuum that we're talking about. But I find real big value for Maxwell's Midland in the integration stage. If we have people in our community doing amazing things and they're becoming active community members, and the idea behind Maxwell's Midland is putting a condition out there to foster engagement, but also foster somebody to become a member of their citizenry.
Yeah.
And that moves somebody from just living somewhere to being an active citizen within a community. Folks talk about these relationships they have with their community, and people will list it as love-hate. I don't really think it's love-hate. I think it's more like love, and I'd never really considered this. I'm in this 80%, 90% gray area, and then there might be this small area of hate. So this model, we're looking at converting people from that gray area over to that love stage, that most powerful emotion that we can feel. And how do we move people into that love stage? I think it's different for each and every person, and providing communities where people can find their place. On an earlier episode of this show, I had Jazz Benitez on, and they're an extremely talented artist, and I really, really love getting to know Jazz better. But Jazz said on the show, I was just looking for a place where I could be loved and find a place that can be home. And I think that can be micro, that can be as small as this building that we're sitting in right now that we've talked about so many times at Ashman Plaza, and an organization like Live Oak, which then empowers a young professional business owner or a young couple like JNC Media to open up a business here, or Annie Stout, who was on episode 1 of this show, who is our day-to-day communicator on Max, to have a building upstairs. But then even outside of those walls, how do you take those skills and you find that role? Well, then you'll see Jazz's art throughout the community. And that becomes part of that special sauce. It becomes part of that seasoning that makes the food taste better. It makes the community more palatable. It provides culture. It provides place. And if you were not setting yourself apart, but even then, if you're not talking about it in specific ways, that integration doesn't really occur.
Yeah, you make it such a pleasure to talk about this because you're remarking on a really important point that, in Jazz's case and these other cases, is people are looking at not just these transactional factors. They want transformational ones or relational ones. And to that point of like the attraction and acquisition, it's like, okay, the job may be fine. The offering may be looking just fine, but but also in the workplace and certainly outside of the workplace. I don't want this just to be I'll do this and you give me that and that's all there is to it. This is just a real transactional deal. It's very cut and dry. Is people want to be able to maybe blur those lines a little bit more. They want to connect themselves in more meaningful ways. They want to be able to have a sense of purpose and significance and impact in both their workplace and their community. And having one and not the other, isn't quite enough anymore. People want that. People want both. And that's what I really like about what we're talking about here is we're talking about how you can achieve both.
And I've looked at other things we've talked about on the show as well. We've had Brad Tunney on and talk about the Great Lakes Loons and how that can provide a place for people if you have interest in sports. And, the Los Angeles Dodgers recently won a World Series, but to see, a list of 6, 7, 8, however many people that lived in Midland at one point in time play a role in that championship, it kind of makes you feel like you're a part of it a little bit if you've been brought into that community. Or, your coworker, Mary Beth Pinkola, who was on the show, we talked a lot about Midland Young Professionals, My Pros, which is a group that I'm extremely active in, but it just provides such belonging. And those are important pieces to have for integration. Or if you go to the Maxwell's Midland website, so many different service clubs and organizations are looking to bring people into the community and help them find their role. And that integration piece, I don't think you really move to those next steps of providing psychological safety and giving them full-on licensed roles without building these programs out. But how do we talk about them? And are we willing to take the risk to talk about them a specific way and invest in this type of idea? Yeah,
like the investment is significant. It's like, all right, we've as a community or an employer, you've went through a lot of effort to attract and acquire people, and as a person, you've gone through a lot of effort to make those decisions yourself. So it's through that. It's like, all right, you got me. Now what are you going to do with me? People want to be part of a tribe. And I think that's what you're talking about there is like, okay, how do I know and how am I experiencing that sense of tribe? And we can call that a community in its modern day form. And if we don't do that, we may have acquired someone, we may have somebody right here with us, but they're not as in touch, they're not as connected. And that's certainly going to play into their overall satisfaction. And then their ability to contribute in order to add value to the community as well. And also to receive value, because unless you're engaged, unless you're connected, you're not going to be able to have that exchange.
And we move in through that integration stage, and now we're really beginning to give license to people, and we're starting to build that faith between one another, build that trust between one another. But we have to give them those tools for success. And we have to make sure that they have the ability to succeed with whatever role they're beginning to find within that community. We've attracted them. We had them sign on the dotted line. We've acquired them. We took them on the date. We're now integrating them. Maybe we're going steady a little bit, right? But how are we continuing to reinforce that to build that stronger relationship? So the next stage of this piece that we're looking through on the people mover model or talent continuum and
I like the way we're shopping it out.
Hey, I want to keep planning this. So I really want the name of this to somehow come from the comments of this video. And this piece we know is going to live for a long time as kind of a showpiece for this. So
we're going viral.
Even if you're listening to this a year from now, it might have a completely different name. So I think it'd be funny to see how it changes over time and go back to this episode. But this equip piece, so empowering people with the necessary knowledge and skills to support their ability to provide value in the present. Now, I think this one's extremely interesting, and I want to hear from you first, kind of your thoughts on what this equip stage can look like, what it does look like, and kind of your dreams around this space.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the workplace. So, like integrating, we might be able to call that like onboarding. Like, all right, it's my first day or my first week. I don't know where to get a pencil, maybe more modern. I don't know where to get to IT to get my computer set up. I don't know where the bathroom is. I don't know how I access the building. I don't know where I'm supposed to park. There's all these things once you first sort of step in, right, that you don't know, that a lot of people usually take for granted. Like, I don't know, I've been here for a while. I just know those things. And if we don't take care in those steps in the workplace, and I'll get to the not workplace, then that person's not going to feel very engaged or connected. So you may have made all these great promises in the attraction and acquisition phase of like, here's how it'll be if you choose us, and here's how great it'll be. But if that's not panning out in reality in that really crucial first step, it's really going to leave a bad impression in terms of, oh, I see, maybe those are some false promises to get me to sign on that dotted line. So you got to take care for just those basic, maybe we call them housekeeping things, is to like, okay, you can just know how to orient yourself in this new environment. In the community, it might be like, I'm not necessarily from the area, so I didn't know where to get coffee. Here, we're pretty close to being able to get that if we want. I didn't know where Live Oak was when I came here. I didn't know the best place to get like a nice bottle of wine and cheese. Like I like to go to Eastman quite a bit. I didn't know any of those things. So in the community, it's like, where do I go to live? In the job, there might be a manager that's responsible for that. I really like the way that Max has taken up the mantle to say, hey, we can help do that, along with the affiliative partners like MyPros and things like that, to be able to say, we'll help get you set up. Now, let's say we've done all that. Now it's like, all right, well, what are we up to? What's the thing that brought us together in the first place? It wasn't just to get you to familiar to know where to use the restroom or where to grab a coffee. We're here to partner up. We've got some like-minded goals that are the reason why we teamed up in the first place. So what do you need right now to actually make those things happen, those stated objectives or goals, those mutually beneficial targets that we've set up? You're new. What do you need to be able to be successful right here and right now? Because we don't want to just think about success later on. We need to get some short-term wins right from the beginning. Certainly in the workplace, you need to get a return on investment. I'd say at the community level, the more engaged we can get people, the more exchanges that will occur and the more transformations. Like we're going to make things better through those interactions. So we don't want to just leave that off the table. We want to equip people with those resources, whether that's getting to know somebody that they need to get to know, whether that's knowing a place to go, whether it's kind of understanding the culture and the temperament of the place. We need to be thinking about, in the workplace, we might say in the next 90 days, what is it that we would define success as, and what obstacles do we see, and what do you need, and what would be helpful? In thinking about that, maybe in the community, it's like when you first move here, like I did, was getting a place to live was pretty important. The job was figured out, but I don't know where I'm going to stay. Yeah. So having help in those factors to be able to get nested in the community so that you can be successful in your life outside of work, but then also in work too.
And looking at this being one of our main challenges, obviously there's other pieces that fall into this as well that keep people in a community, and it's all these other pieces that we're continuing to work on at the community success panel level as well, like housing falls into this continuum as well, and childcare falls into this continuum as well. And there's so many other factors that keep someone here, but even if somebody walks away from this episode and they don't necessarily understand the full thing that we're talking about, because we are talking about some pretty high-level stuff here, and it might not be as easy to follow if you don't have this in front of you and if you haven't looked it up yet. But, when we take a look at this, it's what it adds to that stickiness, right? And that's the whole magic I want someone to take away from this, is what area do you play in adding to that stickiness? And I'm glad you talked about Max in an area for integrate, equip, and how do we equip people maybe with the community calendar so you can find places to meet with others? Yeah. How do you equip people with, service organizations that might match your needs, wants, and desires? How do you equip people with, sense of belonging and providing that? And it's the benefits that go beyond the paper that don't necessarily hit on the math categories, but might, maybe they invite someone else in, maybe they meet each other and, start a business. Maybe they come together in different ways, and all of these different pieces. And I know it looks different at a workplace from, equipping someone with the tools to do their job, but also how do we equip people with the tools to be a community member? Yeah,
maybe I want to volunteer in a certain space. What are the places where I can get involved in that? And, whether we're talking about work or outside of work, there's two things that people are aimed at, is that they want to provide value and they want to receive value. And then they're sort of looking for that match, at every step, no matter where you're at in this, as you're looking for a match, is there opportunity to receive value and provide it?
Well, we give everyone the tools now, and we've got them kind of working here, and, we're finding that common value. But now we hit this development stage, and this word gets thrown around a lot, and it gets used in different ways. And I know you're very crucial on language, and I do a lot of writing for work. So with develop, we have providing mentorship, growing knowledge, skills, ability, and opportunities that advance people to reach their full potential. Now, this is where teamwork really, really becomes imperative. Mm-hmm. So how are you and I working together right now on talent development and retention? We are doing this together right now. We are developing not only our personal relationship, but also just developing a way for folks to be able to look at this and, developing their brain around this idea. So this develop category, how do you see this taking shape both in and outside of the workplace?
Well, I think of like equipping. Maybe in the workplace we would call that, training. It's like the present. What do you need right now to be successful right now? Because we want to be successful right now. But even if we're successful right now, we start to think, well, how are we going to be successful later? That makes it kind of tough because, man, now I got to be successful in two different places. Meaning we don't want to be successful now if we know that it's going to be a failure later. We're looking for continued success. So we want to partition the idea of equipping people with the resources in the present, but then also thinking of where do we want it to lead? And people want things to lead somewhere, and they want things to lead somewhere promising or somewhere beneficial or somewhere that they'll value. And if as a workplace, we're not able to show developmental opportunities of like, okay, in 3 years, where could I be? Or what might I be able to do to increase my responsibilities or opportunities for growth? An improvement, whether that's monetary or non-monetary. Maybe it's wages, but maybe it's also just being able to work on projects that really speak to someone, or maybe someone's investing in getting an education and they want to be able to apply that later on. In the community, it might be, well, I'm in my 20s now, and I've got the things that I'm looking for, and I'm able to be connected in the ways that I want, but maybe in my 30s, things might be different. Or we could say I'm in my 50s, maybe I'm in my 60s, and now I'm looking at retiring. We're talking about what are the abilities and provisions to be able to connect to our potential as we move forward. And if people can perceive that things are going good today and things are seeming like they're going to go good tomorrow, I think that you're going to be able to continue engagement, and people are going to continue to see value. And through that, I think you're going to be able to retain people, which is kind of that next notch. But we talk about retention as if retention provides retention. Retention is just an outcome. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what predicts retention? Or what are the variables that influence retention? And I'd say that it's this idea of welcoming people or integrating them, making sure that they're connected and familiar and know where to move and where to go. It's taking care of the present, and it's also taking a look at the future. And by those, you're going to retain people.
So we've attracted. We had that first look at the bar. We've acquired. We might have had, that first date. We've integrated. We've went on a couple dates. We've equipped. We've started to get to know each other, maybe each other's families. We developed. We had some financial conversations
here.
Hey,
where's this going to go? Or is this a short-term thing? Or?
Like, are you ready to commit? If you sit in this develop stage too long,
not
going to
retain
keep moving people. You got to make the proposal, right?
Yeah.
This is the one knee. You got to make the proposal. So to retain someone, these are efforts that keep valued people engaged and satisfied, reducing attrition through opportunities for growth, recognition, positive culture, and sense of belonging. Now, this is the commitment to stay in the area.
Yeah.
This is when someone says, like, for me, like, I want to live downtown Midland. I want to walk to Loons games.
Yep.
I want to go meet with my friends at restaurants. I want to work at the Midland Area Community Foundation where I feel supported and loved and cared for and given license to take part in incredible things like Max Loves Midland, and I have this psychological safety with the people around me, and now with my community as well, because we're sharing this symbiotic bond.
Mm-hmm.
This is the real marriage piece for me, right? So this is retention. You've got me. You're going to keep me here. And again, that's thrown around a lot too, but this piece of retain is what everyone is trying to accomplish. Obviously, there's another step of this that we'll get into, but this piece of retain is so important.
Yeah, it's through, if things feel like they're going good and they're like, I like where this is going, or this feels good right now and it seems like it's going good later, inside of work and outside of work. And there's a lot packed into that. But fundamentally, when you break it all down, that's the sense or the feeling that we were talking about, this importance of feeling. That's the feeling someone's looking for. You're not walking around measuring how retained you feel. Right, you're walking around, or if you're like me,
How retained are you today,
I'm
Jason?
I feel like a 6.2 on my retention. But earlier when I was hungry, I was more like a 4.3. And then, maybe on a Monday, it's just silly. You would say, well, what predicts retention? It's like, well, if I like how things are going in the present, it seems like we're not walking off a cliff either later on either. And then you start to ask yourself, well, what is it that people want? Within these stages, it's like, well, they want to feel welcome. They want to be to contribute. They want to be able to grow. They want to be able to exercise the things that give them life, that energize them. And as a community, we need to have a diverse set of offerings to be able to provide that. And as a workplace, you got to provide more than a paycheck.
Now, Josh, if you can, let's put this entire model up on the screen so people can kind of see exactly where this all came from. But we've went all the way up the ladder, and honestly, this can be, and I think you have graphics where it's a circle as well.
Yeah.
But sustaining, this is the ultimate goal. This is the piece that keeps people here, but then also begins to play a part in that attraction of new individuals as well. When you see somebody on the Maxwell's Midland show, like Jason, who may have underestimated his charm at one point in time, but I think it's on point at this moment in time. You might say, I can see myself in this community. I can see that that's an authentic story. I can see myself there, and I want to come be a part of that as well. So all of these pieces go in a row, but they feed each other in so many specific ways. A community that sustains, what are they doing at that point?
Well, they're handling change with grace, because change is going to come. It's going to happen, and we need to be readying ourselves for it. And we can prepare for it in a way that allows us to flourish and to welcome that in, or we can kind of defer it and presume that change isn't going to happen and that things will stay the same. So in the workplace, certainly regimes change, leaders change, frontline staff change, middle management changes. So we were talking about how not all divorces are created equally, right? So like when they go well, that they're not as damaging. In fact, they can be beneficial or healthy. As an organization, if you can figure out how to manage it, as it'd be called succession, you're going to be more fluid in terms of how well you embrace or go into the future as change comes. If those things are erratic and volatile, they can be quite damaging for the business to be able to continue to produce the goods or services that it has. It's going to be quite stressful on the people within the workplace, which is usually when succession is handled poorly. You see a lot more than just one person leave. You see multiple people leave. And I'd say the same thing might be true about a community, is that our institutions, they need to be preserved. They need to be preserved, maybe just the physicality of it, like the facilities themselves. But we can also think of that in terms of the people too, is that we want to be thinking about things like mentorship or passing the torch, being able to equip people, going back to that idea, for future opportunities so that we have longevity out of the beautiful things that make the community vibrant, is that those changes are going to require people to be able to shoulder those changes.
What I like about this model is there's so much trust involved in all of this. And it's really this trust-based approach between people, and a community has to really approach each other with open arms, regardless of, so many different factors in our life that tend to divide us. And I'm so happy to live in a community like Midland where, there are so many differences with the people that I talk to every single day. But at the same time, it feels like we are really bought into this idea of we have to align and work in a space of coming together, or it's not going to work out as a community. But as individuals, we're going to be less happy. And it's just the power of people and the power of trust and the power of love really baked into this entire model. I think a community that gets this understands that it has problems, but then also understands that we have to be vigorous in the way that we approach them. We have to move together boldly, and we have to be in these spaces to really attack this. And there's a lot of vulnerability that it takes to adopt a model like this and really look at ourself within the model, our organization within the model, but then also how do we adopt it? And I'm just curious what the future of this model is for you.
Yeah, so if I have my way, what we're going to be able to do is be able to be putting this model forward, being able to invite people to engage with it. More practically, it's like, well, if you have something like we talked about the community success level, it's like, okay, at the community success panel, we've agreed that this would be a strong model to be able to anchor to figure out what we need to do in practice. Because essentially this document is a theory, but the theory is no good if you don't practice it. It's just sitting on the shelf somewhere. So if we can be able to tap into how we can bring this model into practice, whether that's in the workplace or whether it's not in the workplace, it's not about going and telling people how to do things different. It's about asking people, where are you winning and where might you be struggling, and how might we be able to remove obstacles and provide resources so that you can do even better where you're doing good and maybe not struggle so much in the areas that you're not. I think that you made such a great point on the sort of like vulnerability, or sort of the heart in this, is that attraction and retention as such just kind of seems instrumental in transactions. We're going to get you and not let you go, or we're going to keep you, right? You want to be able to think as well. You want people to be engaged and staying by their own volition. Like they want to be choosing that, walking towards that, not sort of just being stuck, right? And you want people to be able to thrive, which is another term that I really love that we have in our community's vision. And I think that this model, especially in the middle, where we're talking about making sure people are welcome, making sure we're taking care of what people need of in the present, while also not neglecting what people need in the future. To me, those are the things that help people thrive.
It's really hard to look at a model like this and move forward if you're afraid of no so much, right? And we've talked about that in part one. Is we have to continue to look for ways to say yes.
Yeah.
Say yes to one another. Say yes to the idea that we have problems. Say yes to the idea that we have advantages that make us a community of choice. Mm-hmm. And say yes to the projects and the initiatives that move the community forward in a way that invites everyone into the work that aligns with our community vision statement.
Yeah, we got to think about like there is a like risk analysis, but there's also a cost in inertia, right? Of not doing anything or going so slow that things change so much. And now, you're kind of stuck as a consequence of not mobilizing or being agile. So it's this balance. You don't want to be hasty, but you also want to make sure that you have be nimble too. Like you have to be able to strike while the iron's hot, or there's all sorts of, little phrases that sort of capture that is having a sense of the temperature and knowing what to do in the situation that you're in. So I do think that, we are going to encounter the largest, exodus in American workforce history. Like that's an objective truth. Usually in the Midwest, we benefit from the luxury of things happening first on the coast, and then we can see of whether it's all fluff or just, something that's not worth adopting, like it might be a fashion trend or something like that. And then if it's something real that sticks, then maybe we get to adopt it, and we've learned from the people that have done it first. But, we're certainly not the youngest population in the country and in our region, maybe not even the youngest in our state. And I'm not necessarily a spring chicken either. But what I would say is that we don't necessarily have the same luxury of waiting to see how it pans out for others. And I'd say if we're talking about living up to our vision that we have as a community, it is about being bold in this area and taking strides in it early on. I don't think we have to have an alarmist or I'm not,
a proper
afraid,
urgency.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of it or anything like that. But it's nothing we want to defer either. I think we want to be calculated and concerted about it. And when I say concerted, I mean like united in thinking about that. Not just within different entities within the community and in organizations, but across them too.
I thought about failure a little bit in your conversation there, because that's always a fear when, you're engaging with a model like this, or honestly supporting an initiative like Maxwell's Midland too. Yeah. It's this fear of failure. And I think there is, unless you're consistent with it, you're never really going to find out where you landed. But also with this fear of failure, being able to move forward and just say, sometimes failure is okay. We're not always going to get everything right within all of these categories, but unless we're trying, we're not going to get anything right.
Yeah, there's this idea that you can't be the master unless you're willing to be the fool, and I think that we're far beyond that, so that's encouraging.
I agree too.
We're starting with some expertise and some really fantastic aspirations and some really key players around the community wherever you go. So I think that it's about being able to value incremental progress versus, oftentimes we can get so prideful that unless it's a big giant leap, it's no good. But people, I can't jump across this whole room 25 feet, even if I wanted to. So if I wanted to go across it, I need to be okay with taking it step by step. Maybe I could run, maybe I can jump a couple times, but I'm definitely not jumping from one side to the other. So I think that we live in an era where unless we can figure out the massive innovation that just changes the whole game, we're not going to do anything. But I'm kind of a continuous improvement guy. All of our process people listening will probably appreciate that. But it's about incremental process, learning as you encounter the environment, and really reflecting and predicting how to continually make better decisions as you go forward, rather than just sitting and waiting until you come up with the perfect strategy for adaptation. I know we're talking kind of psychologically now, but I think that sometimes that can be one of the things that we use to try to mask our fear, is like, no, I'm not afraid. I'm just looking for the perfect move. Well, the perfect move doesn't necessarily exist.
Yeah, and it's, nobody really knows what that next move is sometimes, but when we have a framework like this that we can follow, I think that this puts us in pretty good hands, and I just appreciate your development of this, and I'm looking forward to see where it continues to expand, and I know you're going to be back here. We'll revisit this at some time, but as this becomes one of our focus areas for the community, or one of our areas that is a challenge for our community, I should say, having a framework like this in an adopted framework, and I think it's great that at the community success panel level in our breakouts that spoke about this particular area that, we're moving forward with this, and I think that you have assumed a role in the community. You've assumed a space, and I think Max Loves Midland and myself, we've assumed a space here as an entity, and I hope that, this conversation at least gets people thinking about where they fit into this, and maybe it's alongside one of us. Maybe it's in a completely different category, right? Yeah. And for anyone out there who's looking for, ways to say, like, how do I get involved in my community, or where do I fit in at, I always say just look for whatever makes you feel best.
Yeah. And reach me. I'll give you my phone number. No, I'm just kidding. We maybe could tag it at the bottom. It's jstory@mbami.org. Send me an email. I would be happy to discuss it in more length. What we really want to do is get buy-in. I'm thinking of Cotter's 8 Steps for Change, which maybe we'll link that up on the screen as well. But you want to get a guiding coalition, and then you mobilize efforts, and then you look for short-term wins. And what we're doing here is we're kind of following those steps and sequences. Is we've got consensus around, okay, what's the challenge and opportunity, and what's the right way of what's the sword and shield that we can equip ourselves with to go deal with it. And that's what I think that this framework allows us to do, is it's the right equipment to go deal with the job. And through that, then we're able to mobilize and go out into the field and be able to figure out how to get wins and to be able to make change.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. I think we've had a great day here on the Max Loves Midland show, and we just recorded back to back. I know people are probably listening to these at different times, and they do release at different weeks. But
I should have brought a different shirt.
Hey, we should just mix it up one for the other. Put our big, in our first one, we talked a lot of hip hop. We could have wore our NFL jerseys. Could have been like 2004.
A throwback jersey.
You mentioned Blueprint. I think Jay was like rocking a lot of those big jerseys at that time. So thank you so much for coming on, and appreciate you being with us and being transparent and sharing a lot of your work with us. I know that a lot of you is within this model, and a lot of your thoughts, and it's for the benefit of other people, and I think that's a gift. And
thank you.
I don't know if that gets recognized or if you feel that, but I hope you know that what you're doing is absolutely incredible, and I'm happy that our community has adopted you as an expert in this space. So.
Well, I'm going to keep it up, and that does mean a lot to me. But before we close, and I don't know if this is the close, I got a question for you. So, you put me in the hot seat at the end of our last conversation. He was like, what if Midland could have its greatest wish, or what's your greatest wish for Midland? What would that be? So I'd be curious to hear what yours is.
It's interesting. We've talked a lot today about, really academic speak around these areas. And, I could take this to an area where I could talk specifically about this framework, or I could talk, about, Max having more users or anything like that. But I just want to talk about myself just for a moment here. I found a real home in Midland, and I found a space where, I felt loved by so many different people. And, ever since the moment, I worked with great leaders even at Best Buy, and then being able to find a space in my career field at, MCTV because somebody like Ron Beacom saw something in me, and then be able to find a space at, the Midland Area Community Foundation because Sharon Mortensen wasn't afraid to take a chance on an upstart communicator. And when we empower people and we trust them, I just hope that our community vision statement can really come true for people to feel loved. And I know that's been said so many times on the show, but it's so important for a community to have a vision, to have a direction. You go so many places and they don't. Recently, I was at Council of Michigan Foundations, and just being able to mention that our community has a vision, but not only has a vision, has a group that continues to meet regularly. That is ridiculously, unbelievably amazing. And those are people that care about one another, care about people they've never met, and looked at this space as a way to find a place in all of this. I'm very humble about the work that we're able to do with Maxwell's Midland. I know that my face is on the show and stuff like that, and it's not because I want it. It's not because I want it to be necessarily, but it's because that's where I see my role in this. Yep. And I hope everyone else can, feel loved, cared for, trusted, to find their role in the community. And, I think we all play one, right? Like right down to the coffee I grabbed here, I was met with a smile and some kind words and other people on their mission, but they filled that role. Coming here to JNC Media and just having incredible work from Josh and China and their whole team, and just being able to have them fill a role in bringing this show together. There's so many pieces that make a community tick, and there's so many pieces that that really make a place special. And that number one thing is its people, and I think role within a community is its number one factor. So I just hope everyone can feel empowered, trusted, and loved to find their role in the community. And if they don't, then that means we need to revisit this framework a little bit and come back to it. So, again, I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to learning a little bit more about this. So head over to the MBA's website, obviously, if you want to learn a little bit more about what's going on over there. What's your email address one more time? jstory@mbami.org. Send your memes. All right.
Man,
so
I didn't qualify that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us again here today at the Maxwell's Midland Show. And thank you guys for being with us again for the Maxwell's Midland Show. I think it's been an incredible ride today. And make sure you're always checking out maxwellsmidland.com. Again, that's your community calendar. Find your place. Find your service club, find your resources in the community, and check back on some of our old stories here. If you didn't watch part one of today's episode, I highly recommend you go and meet Jason and then argue in our comments about our list of favorite rappers as well. So thank you once again. And as we always say here on the Maxwell's Midland Show, if you build a bridge and it doesn't get the job done, it's time to rethink it. Go ahead, build a tridge. Thank you. Subscribe wherever you consume media. Maxwell's Midland is your entertainment, resources, and collective improvement hub for Midland County. Plan your next adventure in Midland at maxwellsmidland.com.